Hi, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make a jig that enables you to accurately and safely remove the corners from your turning blanks, yet still keep them balanced. Some of you are probably wondering, why would I want to do this? Well, there are three simple reasons why I'd want to do this. The first one is time. Instead of starting your wood turning project with this, you would now be starting with this. Imagine how much time you would save not having to use the roughing gouge to round the piece out. The second reason is wear on your tools. You won't have to sharpen your roughing gouge nearly as often. And the third reason is cleanup. Imagine how much of a mess this much wood would make if it were turned into shavings on the floor. Let me give you another visual. Here's a 4x4. I want to end up with approximately a 3-inch spindle, as illustrated by the circle I've drawn. Look at how much waste can be eliminated prior to starting to turn it. So let's start making our jig. We want our wood for this project to be at least 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches thick. If you don't have stock that thick, don't worry about it. Just take 2 3/4-inch pieces of wood, glue them together. I already have stock this thick, so that's what I'll use. I'd like my jig to be approximately 17 inches long by about 3.5 inches wide. It doesn't have to be exact. You can size it to your specific needs. Next, we move over to the jointer. Now, it's not necessary to joint this project, but the more accurate you build your jig, the more well balanced your blanks are going to end up being. First, we want to joint one of the faces of the board. Next, we take the face that we just jointed and place it against the fence of the jointer, and we'll joint an edge. Next, we move over to the table saw. We set our fence to rip the board to the final desired width. We place the edge that we had just jointed against the fence, and then we rip the piece of wood. Our finished project is going to have a groove cut on both sides of the board. One for larger stock and one for smaller stock. The groove for the larger stock is going to be located approximately 1/2 inch from the edge of the board. So let's set that cut up on our table saw right now. In order to cut our groove, I have to remove the blade guard as well as the riving knife. I also replaced the zero clearance throat plate with the original stock one in order to enable me to tilt the blade at 45 degrees. Now we tilt our blade. Make sure we tilt it to a full 45-degree angle. Tighten it down. You want to set your blade depth in order to make a cut approximately 1 inch deep into the wood. As I said earlier, we want the groove to be located about 1/2 inch from the edge of the board. So take your tape measure and mark 1/2 inch. We now place our board on the table saw, and we set up our fence so that we're going to cut right on the 1/2 inch mark that we made. Next, I lay my square on the cut I made, and I draw another 45-degree angle. Next, we put our piece of wood back on the table saw, we move our fence, and we line up our cut with the line we just drawn. Now we make our cut. And here's our successfully cut groove. Now we're going to want to cut our smaller groove on the other side. So flip the piece of wood over, and we measure about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the board. Make a mark. We move our fence and we align our cut just as we did before.
Now this blade is shallower, so I've lowered the blade to make a cut only 1/2 inch deep.
Once again, we find and mark our 45-degree angle. Again, we line up and make our cut. And here we have our completed jig. Alright, now let's take it for a test drive. First with a large piece of stock, and then a smaller piece.
We place our jig firmly against the fence and then slide it along the fence towards the blade. You can vary how much of a corner you want to remove by moving your fence closer or further away from the blade. In order to cut our final corner, we line up the angles of the blank with the groove in the jig and then hold the blank firmly against the jig as we move the jig along the fence.
Here's our completed large turning blank. To do a smaller turning blank, we simply take our jig, flip it over, and we use the smaller groove that's closer to the edge of the jig. And here we go, a smaller piece of stock with the corners removed, ready for turning. I use this jig all the time. In fact, I keep it right beside the bandsaw so that it's always handy. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, and stay safe in the shop.